Swan Lock. I'll never forget Swan Lock. We had come up on some Red Chinese Special Forces, and for 4 days and 4 nights, we were fighting them. Our unit was known to be tough, and we held our own, even though the odds were pretty much against us. But at the end of it, 14 of our guys were killed. 14 bodies drug out of bunkers. It got to the point that I paid no attention to death, and I built a great big wall. I could look at anything, people torn all to pieces, death all around me, and say, quote, "Well, that's tough," unquote, and walk away. After 13 months over there, they say it's time to go home. You did your service. But how do you go home after living day after day, having someone shoot at you and you shooting back? You go from killing people to cutting your lawn. I remember the trip back. People on the plane didn't even speak to me, didn't even look at me. It took years before I could even look at myself. Home, what's home after that? And you get back, you think you've got this wall built up, this great big wall, but it's that same wall you keep hitting when you get home, so big you can't get over it. There was a battle inside of me that was worse than anything I'd ever seen. My wife, she was so good and so patient. We started a family, and with her care and raising the kids, that old dead feeling started to leave, and that warm, sweet feeling started coming back. But it never comes back all the way. In Vietnam, it never stays gone too long. My son, he's 13 now. We were working on my old Ford engine in the garage, and he asked me,
"Dad, when were you in Vietnam?"
and I told him, quote, "Last night," unquote. And Vietnam was no easy place.
I was 24 years old, living in Michigan and married to my wife, Sandy. We didn't have any children. We thought we would never have children, so we looked into adoption. We had just started adoption proceedings, and I was drafted. I asked her, "Are you sure you want to move ahead with this adoption? I don't want to leave you to start our family alone."
This baby, our baby, needs a family. I may have to do everything at the beginning, but isn't that what all mothers do anyway?
I know, Sandy, but
We will get this baby, and when you get home, we will be waiting for you.
well, what happened was, in my unit, everyone else was 18, 19 years old. I was 24, an old man. I had a wonderful job and left to do this. Well, they asked me if I wanted to go to OCS. I said no. I wanted to do my 2 years and get out. They put me in a training program and made me an active sergeant at Fort Carson, Colorado. I do the work of a sergeant, but I don't get the pay. I still had the pay of a private. They wanted me in this role because that's the person who chooses the assignments of the men in my unit, including who gets sent to Vietnam. I tried to put my men in places that suited them, where I knew they would have a chance to survive, and, well, the men knew that. That was in 1966. Well, in 1968, toward the end of my 2 years, I had the opportunity to be promoted to sergeant. The only problem was I had to change my military occupation specialty to a combat MOS. Otherwise, I couldn't be promoted. Wanting to start a family, we needed the bigger paycheck. Well, as the assignment officer, I knew I wasn't going to put my name down to go over to Vietnam. So I put in for a promotion, changed my MOS, and started the adoption proceedings.
Gary, we got a call. We need to appear before the judge to review us. A good friend of his daughter is having a baby, and they wanted to place it with us. It's finally happening.
We were approved. We didn't know if it was going to be a boy or a girl, but it would be in about 3 weeks. Okay, about the next week we get orders that the whole division at Fort Carson was going to go down on levee to Vietnam.
What does that mean? I thought you were in charge of assignments.
I'm no longer a troop clerk. I'm a track commander. So what does that mean? I have to go to Vietnam.
What will happen to Gary and Sandy's adoption? Will they be able to start their family? Will the agency refuse them since Gary is being shipped overseas? We'll find out later. Right now, if you're just tuning in, You're listening to Jonesborough's original storytelling radio hour, A Night with the Yarn Exchange, on WETS 89.5 FM out of Johnson City, Tennessee.
Lori, I don't know about you, but I'd like to get back to see how Gary and Sandy are handling the news about his shipping out and their adoption.
Oh, I would too. So let's get back to that story. When we left, Gary just found out he had orders to go out to Vietnam.
When we got approved to get our son and we found out that I was being sent out, we thought, well, it's not going to happen. Why would they give a newborn baby to a guy that's going off to Vietnam?
It's going to happen, Gary. We have to have faith. We're going to have our child, and you are going to come home, and we will have our family.
I had to go and find the judge and tell him I'm shipping out in a week.
I know. We've checked your background. We know you're leaving, but it's all right. They want you to have this baby no matter what. We know you'll be coming home safe. We're all praying for it.
So, we get our son, Brad.
It's a boy, Gary. It's a boy. Isn't he beautiful?
We got our son, Brad, and 5 days later, I ship out. It was a strike force type of unit. As a track commander, I sat on the turret with a machine gun on this side and one on this side, and a modification was a grenade launcher below, down here. We were assigned to the 3rd Marine Division. The Marines only had walking infantry at this point, so we were the mobilized unit that joined up with them at the DMZ, the demilitarized zone. What happened there was the Vietnamese could come across and engage with us and then go back over the border, but we couldn't engage with them unless they came across. They could shoot at us once they went across, but we couldn't shoot back because that was South Vietnam. We spent our time there as targets. I was clicking down the time, and it was about 8 or 9 days I had left. And we were sent out. We go to this camp, and a guy comes out and says, "Hey, Degner, you want to go home?" They had a plane that was flying out. I said, "Well, yeah." So I turn in my M16 and my pistol and get on a flight from South Vietnam to Fort Lewis, Washington. I was still wearing my dirty fatigues. I went straight from assignment to the airplane to home. And they had a place we could get cleaned up, and they had some Class A's to change into. I had to report to the pay officer. I had money coming. I didn't know how much. I reported. They asked me if I wanted to re-enlist. I said no. They gave me $294, and I stood up, saluted, and said, "Now what?"
You're on your own. You're not my problem now.
I'm in Fort Lewis, Washington with $294, and I don't know even how to get off the post, let alone how to get home. So I called my wife. "Sandy, I just got discharged."
When will you be home?
"I don't know, but I hope soon." So I catch a cab, go to the airport. In those days, service people could wait, fly on standby for free if there was an opening. So I got a flight home after waiting just a little while. The fortunate thing about this whole thing is that, unlike a lot of guys who didn't have a wife waiting for them and a good job, I had an awful lot going for me. So I didn't really have a lot of the post-traumatic stress type effects. I could take that whole experience and put it in a little closet in my mind and lock it up. I never told anyone I was in the service for a long time. I just forgot about the whole situation. So I didn't have a lot of the problems guys had when they came back. The only thing that did happen was after we got back, we got a letter from the Department of Social Services that said they wanted to come out and do a final inspection to see if we were going to be able to keep our son. That was more stressful than anything I faced in Vietnam. At this point, it's been almost a year that my wife had had Brad. Nobody was going to take him away. I was going to make sure of that. Well, the walkthrough happened. Brad was officially ours.
Gary, I have some news.
It wasn't much longer after that, my wife, who we were told could never get pregnant, well, she did. We had our daughter, that was our family. That was 48 years ago, and we're still together.